The almost 2-month journey for Penn State to find a new football coach concluded with Matt Campbell taking the job. He's now been introduced. He is the new head man, and a new era will begin in State College. I am Mike Asti. This is another episode of Mic Drop here, made possible by the Believe Network, available everywhere you get your podcasts and on SiriusXM. And I've talked about this on this show. We've done several episodes on this, including a recent one with Nittany Sports Now's Joe Smeltzer. But this is going to be a special edition here. We're going to have a unique perspective for Penn State's coaching search, what went on, now Matt Campbell, the new guy, and the future of the Penn State program with somebody who knows the Penn State program very, very well, arguably better than anybody else still around today. And that is Jay Paterno, who, of course, is a Penn State trustee. Of course, we know his father, a legendary former head coach of the Nittany Lions, and an author now of Blitzed, the all-out pressure of college football's new era, that can be found at least on Amazon, but I'm sure on many other locations. Jay, I appreciate the time, man. Happy early holidays to you, and I'm sure it's now a better holiday season now that the search is behind you.
No question about it. It was getting to be. I think David Portnoy tweeted yesterday about it's exhilarating, and I responded like ours took 54 days. Exhilaration has a shelf life.
Yeah. I actually when I led into Joe on our last show, I told him it was a long month for him covering the search, and all of us covering the search, and he corrected me. Almost 2 months. Almost 2 months.
No
there,
question.
54 days. But Matt Campbell now has the job. Again, Jay Paterno here, author of Blitz, the all-out pressure of college football's new era, and even the title of that book is really fitting to what's been going on this year more than any other around the sports. So there's definitely a must purchase here on your Christmas wish list, or a gift for somebody else for sure. Now, I do want to jump into things, Jay. It was a 2-month long journey. It had ups, it had downs. There was good, bad, and the ugly, a part of the search. A lot of confusion for some. Penn State was an early job open, and they end up kind of late in making their decision. It took a while, but they land on Matt Campbell, an accomplished coach from a Big 12 program from Iowa State. He brought that program from the wilderness to being relevant. And while he'll need to do more at Penn State, it's a different animal, a different beast, different amount of pressure. More will be expected. You imagine more can happen with the resources he'll get at Penn State in comparison to his last job, and just the reports of his NIL bank and coaching staff pool and all of that. So what do you make of Matt Campbell before we fully get into the search and the rest here? What do you make of Matt Campbell, the hiring of Matt Campbell? Your thoughts on him now as the Penn State coach?
Well, I do a show called Nittany Game Week, and so for this week, we went back and looked at 8, and I write a blog on my website at jvpaterno.com, but I went back and looked at 8 years of data and looked at what Iowa State had done offensively, defensively, special teams, what their approach would be. So I have a pretty good handle on what to expect and what his approach is. But I think more than that, his approach has been he wants to focus on the high school recruiting. He wants to develop guys over time. He wants to build teams, not just rosters. And it's not just about the money. I think his answers really showed that on Monday at the press conference, which I went to. And I think his approach, he talked about the academics. He put that front and center in his press conference. So I think his approach and his attitude and the way he wants to build a program are going to fit within a history going back 100 years at Penn State to guys like Bob Higgins, Rip Engel, certainly Joe Paterno. He's going to fit in that mold, and I think people will be very happy with what happens.
Yeah, and he has a track record of really strong defenses, of elevating quarterback play. We even saw that with Rocco Beck, who wasn't really thought of as a big-time recruit and then ends up having success at Iowa State. And again, I think people forget when they try to compare records, say, to James Franklin and Matt Campbell, and what Iowa State was before Matt Campbell got there. He resurrected that program and made them a relevant program again. And Penn State, only a couple of years removed from a CFP, so it's not like it's impossible to get back there for the Nittany Lions. So it does seem like he's a fit. He's also a loyal coach, which your father was
no question about it.
Franklin was even there for 12 years. I mean, that's two men that have about 60 years of service with the others mixed in between. Matt Campbell turned down other jobs. Clearly, he wouldn't have accepted this if he didn't think this was right and he didn't want to be there for the long haul.
Well, I think he talked about right out of the gate his grandparents in Carmichael's, Pennsylvania, out in Western PA, how they were Penn State fans, and they talked about Coach Paterno and that kind of stuff. So, he knows what he's walking into, and he knows what this program is. And I think when people talk about people's records, some guys go into a program that on a scale of 1 to 10, they start at a 2 and they get into a 7 or 8. He's a guy like that. Pat Fitzgerald's a guy like Greg Schiano at Rutgers went in.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't look at just the wins and losses. You have to look at what guys did where they were. And I think he did a remarkable job at Iowa State. And he's not starting from a 2 at Penn State. He's starting somewhere in that 8 range. So, I mean, obviously the expectation can be higher here, but his ability to do things and jump off from there are going to be higher too as well.
Right. What kind of room do you expect him to get, though, from the board, from alums, from fans? I mean, you remove a coach because you're having a rough start to a year. You expect national championship, and it doesn't get near that. But prior the year before, he was in the CFP. And Matt Campbell certainly could elevate to that level with the resources Penn State's offering, but he hadn't yet gotten near that at Iowa State. Is he going to get a long leash for you, or is this a shorter thing that if he's not in the CFP in year 1 or 2, that Penn State could be back at this? What do you expect the leash to be?
For me personally, I know it takes time to build a program the way he wants to do it in a way that endures. Now, that's me personally. Fans in the era of Kurt Signetti, there's this. I start telling people the Signetti effect. People expect you to come in now and wave a magic wand. Now 100%. It looks like a number of his assistants are coming, so that'll help him build a program out where he's got guys that know what he's about. And Signetti did that same thing in Indiana. But I think it's going to, having lost a recruiting class, trying to build that will be difficult, and having, that'll hit 2 and 3 years from now. But I think people got to be patient about what happens, and I'd rather be patient and pleasantly surprised than be impatient and always miserable. And I mean, that's just the way it is. And I think he is the kind of guy that's going to build a program that has enduring and lasting success, and I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, Jay Paterno here joining me on Mic Drop with Believe and Sirius XM, talking the Penn State coaching search and landing on Matt Campbell. And, there's also something to be said, and Penn State fans just endured the last 2 months that we opened up the show talking about. You want to have some consistency and some continuity. You don't want to be at this every year where you're trying to look for a coach. So you obviously you're not going to win a national championship every single year, but that is important. Now, to flip back and rewind a bit, number one, it did take 54 days. And Matt Campbell clearly made it out like he would have probably taken this job weeks earlier. He wanted to finish his season, but this was a job that he was not going to turn down. The other coaches maybe that were available maybe didn't feel like a fit for Penn State. So simply put, and you as a trustee kind of knew what was going on, why did it take this long? Why did it have to take this long? You did miss that recruiting class. You could argue if year 1 is rough, it's because it took this long.
Oh, there's no question. Look, I'll be, when they fired Coach Franklin, we got an email as trustees maybe 5 minutes before it was announced. This was Pat Kraft kind of was running the show at that point. Sure. And a friend of mine immediately called me, who are you going to get? I said, look, I'm not going to stick my nose in. This job's going to be hard enough for athletic director administration without me weighing in. When they have a new coach, they'll let us know. Well, after, Kalani at BYU turned it down, that was the first time I made a call to the chair of the board and said, look, if I can help in any way, let me know. And if, let me know. And if keeping my mouth shut and staying out of it is more helpful, let me know. Whatever you
And that was only a couple weeks ago. I mean, that was
a week and a half ago. So I made sure, I did not, contrary to what some people have alleged, I was not involved in it. I didn't talk to candidates. The only person I ever mentioned the job to was I was at the Ohio State Penn State game. I'm with the Fox guys. Urban Meyer's there, and I've known Urban a long time. And Shelly Myers is there. And I said to her, Shelly, Hey, listen, your husband right now is the second most popular guy in State College, and the guy ahead of him has been dead for 14 years. Um, and he's shot. She goes, "We're done. We're done." And I
Yeah,
said, "Well, that tells me all I need to know."
right.
But that's about the only thing I did. A couple of people called me and said, "What do you think?" I said, "Look, if you want to go after it, go after it." And I think this is a great place, a great job. But I did not get involved in the process at all.
Okay.
I just think that would be fair to the people who have to actually do something and deal with it. But the most important thing is we landed on a really, really great person to come take this job. And if we lose a recruiting class, in the age of the portal, you can go get guys that redshirted that have
Yeah.
4 years left or 3 years left, whatever it may be. So you can fill those in. It's just a little more difficult.
Yeah, and it goes both ways with the recruiting class in this era because yeah, you have the portal, but even talking to colleagues covering other programs that maybe have to think about whether or not they were going to make a coaching change, and always it's, well, you lose these recruits, you lose this recruiting class. It's clear athletic directors around the country have kind of decided you can't make decisions on what high school recruits are going to do. Like you got to make the decision on what's best for the program, even if it maybe takes a hit for a year for the betterment of the future of the program. And I am sure also that you, Pat Kraft, anybody at Penn State, fans certainly, I'm sure you would have preferred it not to take 54
Yeah.
days. But if Matt Campbell ends up having success and ends up contending in the Big Ten and getting back in the CFP and beyond and winning a national championship for the first time since the last one by your father, then I don't think anyone here years from now is going to be still arguing about the 54-day period. So it'll
No. I mean, look, at the end
it's
of the
all about
day,
what Campbell does.
yeah, I mean, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And I think we finished
Yeah.
in a really, really good place. And that's the most important thing. And like
Yeah.
I said, people just have to be patient and understand. I think athletic directors, if you go back 20, 25 years, a good bulk of the athletic directors had been men or women who had coached sports and had an understanding of what
Sure.
goes on. That's not the case anymore. So when they say, well, it doesn't matter with a recruiting class, sometimes they don't necessarily know what is best. But at the end, like I said, at the end of the day, we got where we needed to be.
Yeah. Jay Paterno again
I
joining
mean,
me
it did
on Mike
seem
Drop.
long. It did. Trust me, believe me.
It
It was not like,
seemed longer
hey,
than it was. It
if
seemed
you had
longer than it
said,
was.
way
Covering it.
back
Yeah.
when, hey, we're going to sign him for 54, I would have said, call Matt Campbell earlier if we can,
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was long for everybody, but again, you landed on Matt Campbell, and
Yep.
he does seem like to be a great fit at Penn State.
Yep.
Jay Paterno here joining me on Mic Drop. And I could ask you a myriad of things here. I'm sure fans want me to ask you 45 questions and talk for 2 hours. Maybe we'll do it another time. I do want to quickly get, before we move on a little bit, you mentioned your involvement in some rumors of how heavily you were involved. There was even a former Penn State player that had some comments about your involvement, accusing you of being too heavily involved, you and your family. Do you have any response to what LaVar Arrington said? I had to ask.
It's absolutely not true. You could ask Pat Kraft. I never called him one time during this whole process.
Okay.
And so I did not get involved. I did not want to get involved because as it would happen, it was gonna be tough. I did probably 2 or 3 dozen interviews during this period where to talk about the book. And every time somebody asked me, they said, "What do you think?" I said, "Look, I'm not getting into it. The athletic director's got to handle this." I had people that would come up to me privately. My barber even said, "Hey,
I'm sure.
who do you want?" I go, "I'm not answering that question. When we get a coach, we'll get a coach." And that's how I was throughout this whole process. So any implication to the contrary is absolutely just not true.
Have you had any recent conversations with LaVar Arrington, either since he made that comments, or what's your relationship like
No,
with him? He's obviously a legendary
no,
former player.
no, absolutely no. I've had any conversation with him about it, but again, he's got stuff and he's got busy things in his life. I got things I'm doing in my life, so it's not like people say stuff. They think they hear something. So be it.
I was going to ask, do you have any idea why he would say that on a public platform? Okay.
No, and sometimes a lot of that stuff people just it's to get attention and get people to react, and that happens.
Yeah, well, that worked. If that was the plan, that did work here, and I had to ask here. Now, your book also focuses a lot on the future of the sport, NIL, transfer portal, now going into one window. This was a crazy coaching cycle, to say the very, very least. There are even people now speculating that if, with the Michigan job being open, that if they end up plucking a coach, that another coach may leave before even coaching a game. We won't fully get into that here, obviously, but everyone knows kind of what I'm alluding to. But that is just insane. And it never even would have been a thought process years ago, even though coaches moved around. So it's hard to ask this generally speaking, but what are your thoughts on the health of college sports, college football in particular? It's really a pro system now. Penn State is more of the have than the have-nots, but there are some that are waiting for the next wave of conference realignment. There are some, and I've argued this too on my shows, that maybe the group of 5 teams need their kind of own playoff thing and let the Power Fours be different. There are some that are vehemently against that. There's a lot that goes into this now, but there are some that are kind of expecting all of this to be the beginning of the end, and the sport could die out from what we ever knew. It's not nearly what it was when your father was coaching Penn State. This is a totally different animal than when he was the coach.
There is no question. And as a trustee, I've said this, I've written about it, I've been interviewed and talk about it. Look, the reality is this, just take the Big Ten, for example. Our media rights deal is $1.1 billion a year. Okay, so this is not an extracurricular activity where some students that happen to go to your school are playing a game afterwards. But this goes back 100 years. I mean, Amos Alonzo Stagg wrote in a book in the 1920s about players that were on and talking about players that were paid mercenaries who weren't even students at school, getting paid by schools like Harvard and places like that. So this is not new. Now, the reality is this. We had this great amateur sports model, that we ran. It was a reliable truck. It could deal with anything, it could drive in any conditions. The reality is, in the last 5 years, we've slapped on NIL. We've slapped on a 12-team playoff. We've moved the signing date around. We've done all these things and just slapped these things on the side of this truck. Well, we're on the Daytona Speedway right now. And this truck no longer works. And this truck actually conflicts with itself because your coaching cycle doesn't quite fit up with your recruiting cycle.
Yeah, the calendar.
So the calendar's been and I've said this, from governing boards like trustees and regents, presidents, athletic directors, coaches, and indeed players, because players have not been part of this conversation at all. There really needs to be a constitutional convention where we take this thing back in the shop, get rid of the old truck, and redesign the entire thing, the calendar and everything from ground one, because we are going at the rate of speed that we can no longer keep up with. And we then need to take that plan to Congress and say, hey, we need you to enshrine this so that we're protected from the latest, because all we've done is bounce from judgment to judgment to judgment. And that's why we are where we are. Until we do that, we're going to be in a mess.
Yeah, and could go into whether you need to have player contracts, and then you get into a whole other thing of, are they full-time employees, and then are you giving them health care? It can go down a real rabbit hole that I don't think even fans are expecting, that I'm sure you guys have all thought about. And then players might push back. That wouldn't give them as much freedom as they have now. Teams would be deciding how many years on a contract they're giving a player. There's a lot that goes into this, but who knows? We might have to go to Congress to ever get there. And mirroring the NFL, the difference too is the NFL has rules in place that college football, college sports does not now. And even though coaches could always leave, and that defends the players having freedom to leave now, there's no pro athlete that has the ability to be a free agent every single year with no contract. And prior to this year with one window, twice a year in the past, which obviously adds a whole dimension to when you're changing coaches, because you're potentially losing a bunch of players that we're seeing happen around the country right now, for sure.
Well, I think, I've talked to ADs, I've talked to coaches, I've talked to people at schools, every one of them will tell you privately, we need to have some sort of collective bargaining, get everything kind of put together. So there's protections for the players and for the school.
Right.
I said, well, say that publicly. I said, I'll say it publicly anytime you want, but we've got to all get in the same page. So I think we're headed to that. And I think we've also got to remember there's this education component that we have to make sure that no one talks about. One of the great things of Matt Campbell's press conference is he led with the academic record he had at Iowa State. And I had already done the research on their NCAA APR rating, the academic performance rating.
And that's important.
And where he had done it, he had risen it consistently through when he got there. So yeah, you can do both. If you look at Ohio State last year, Ohio State won the national championship. They had a perfect APR rating in the NCAA, so they were the best in both. So it can be done. So that should be the goal for everybody.
Yeah, 100%. And that has been just totally lost in all of this. And I know even not just your dad who cared about that, but your mom cared about that. I mean, that was a big deal. And that's harder to care about now because of the calendar. It could just take fixing the calendar. The calendar makes this impossible. And Penn State even dealt with it when they were in the CFP, losing a backup quarterback because of the calendar. And if you move the calendar, maybe you're not having that be as much of an issue, whether it be the coaching drama, whether it be players' academics, or even players having to make decisions about whether to leave a playoff team. As insane as that sounds, that's because of the calendar now. So we will see where all that goes. And then Penn State in particular too, when you look at the new press box, renovation to the stadium, the NIL investment, coaching staff, I mean, we're getting to be $1 billion to try to get this national championship. That's what you have to do in this day and age. But for some, that could be a big beaming light that's a problem, that you have to spend that much, because there are other programs that just simply can't do it. And in the NFL, you have much more parity because of the way that sport's structured. Now there's rev share in, but that is this right now here with college football is just look at what Penn State is going to spend, what Ohio State spent, what Texas Tech, who's not a traditional national contender every year, what they spent and how quickly they got to where they are. And you mentioned Cignetti earlier. I mean, Indiana, he doesn't want to talk about it. You don't have to shy away. Traditionally, one of the worst college programs in history, one of the most losing programs ever, 3 bowl wins in 100+ years. He's there for 2 years. They spend money in addition to him being a great coach, and they're in the CFP back-to-back years, 10+ win seasons, etc. So that it's really all about the money in this day and age. And even though money was spent, there's documentaries. No one's going to deny that people didn't spend some money back in the day.
No question.
Now it's out there in Front Street, and it's just really the wild, wild west for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is this: is the teams that are going to succeed, because you're getting to a point where everybody's spending money and everybody's got money, and so the ones that are going to succeed are the coaches who can build I've talked about this a bunch of times. Anybody can build a roster. You can throw money and get all a bunch of guys in and build a roster.
But spend it right.
Yep. But can you make them a team? Can you, it's one thing to build a roster, it's a whole other thing to build a team. And when it comes down to it, and you get into playoffs and you get in the fourth quarter, if you don't have a team, you lose those games. If you don't have a group of guys that are focused and are in it for the right reasons. So, when I was still coaching, we would recruit kids and we'd say to them 3 things. If you come to Penn State, we want you to get a great education. If your goals are in this order, get an education, be part of a championship team, and then the NFL will happen for you if you're good enough, and we'll develop you. And I think that's kind of going to have to be where the focus goes. But like you talk about a guy like Marcus Freeman, he's done that. You talk about Ryan Day, he's done that. Dan Lanning has done that. Cignetti certainly has built that into a team. Those guys genuinely love each other. When they got the ball back against us here in Beaver Stadium, I went, okay, let's see what happens. Let's see, to their credit, those guys were focused, and it wasn't all about the star wideouts. They got the ball to tight end on a couple key plays, and certainly, so I think that's going to be the key. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm high on Matt Campbell, because that seemed to be his ethos.
Yeah, Jay Paterno here joining me on Mic Drop with Believe and SiriusXM. Again, Jay, the author of Blitz, the all-out pressure of college football's new era, obviously a Penn State trustee as well, and everyone else probably knows the rest of his background. A couple more here before I let you go. Now, I also want to ask about the other coach that was obviously talked about a lot in this coaching search, who's still going to be a part of the Penn State program, maybe to the surprise of some, and that is Terry Smith. How important is it to retain Terry Smith? And what would you say to some people out there that would, push back and say, well, it's great that Terry Smith is still around as a great recruiter and a great man at Penn State, but they wanted him to get the job. There were former players, even current players, that were speaking out publicly. They wanted him to get the job. And he doesn't have the head coaching job, but he is still a part of this staff. So your thoughts on keeping him? And then to even the players that are on social media still upset that he's not the head coach.
Well, I'm elated that he's staying. I mean, I've known Terry. Terry was a year behind me at Penn State. We were teammates. I mean, he came in at 145 pounds, became a really good, really outstanding receiver for us. Still ran the best post corner routes of maybe anybody I've ever seen. Really sold the post before he came out in the corner, but part of it is so compact. But I think that I think the job he did stepping in there was incredible. And I think the people that wanted to see him become the head coach had legitimate reasons to want to see that. I kept my mouth shut. I certainly was proud of what he had done. I saw him at Ohio State and told him, how proud I was of the way he's handled this.
Yeah.
And I've told him that since. And I'm proud of the way he's handled this, not getting the job. Certainly he wanted it, I'm sure. A lot of people wanted him, but the administration went the way they did. I think we have to respect the decision they came to, but also respect that they understand that keeping Terry was vital. I think he's going to be a very, very important connector between the guys that are there and retaining them, and the connections he has across the state recruiting that were very, very valuable. I certainly didn't want to see him end up somewhere else. So I'm excited that he's still here. I understand what he's going through and what some fans wanted, but I think now we've got to just kind of say, okay, Matt Campbell's the guy, Terry's part of it, and Terry's expressed him. Terry's spoken up and talked about how excited he is to still be here and how much his community means to him. So I think we've all got to kind of rally behind that.
Yeah, and keeping him makes this, I guess, less of a polarizing discussion for years on end. If he would have left another job, then fans would always bring this up. But for the fact that he's going to be there, him and Campbell have a great relationship. He is very important, and you got to give him credit too to swallow his pride a little bit and to stay on the staff, and that's kind of a unique situation. So him being still there, it adds an extra dimension for anyone who wanted him to be the head coach. Then maybe you got two on this team right now. So that's a positive. We'll see how long he's there. I'm sure other schools are going to call him if Penn State keeps having success, because now
don't say that. No schools call him. Let Terry stay here.
If it wasn't for me, it wouldn't happen, of course.
No,
I had to put it out there. Jay Paterno, Mike Asti here on Mic Drop, and I'm going to get you out of here with this. We've had a great time. I got to also ask you this. People are going to want me to ask you this. James Franklin is no longer the coach at Penn State. Now he's at Virginia Tech. He had a run there for 12 years, did win a Big Ten title, but at the end was more third or fourth in the conference. They got into CFP. There were some big wins, even though fans kind of dispute them. Won a lot of games, a 700 win percentage. How do you view the James Franklin era looking back, and even kind of the way that was handled? Because he clearly is in his feelings a little bit about it. It's still fresh. He's still coaching, but resume-wise, you got to imagine he's getting inducted in Penn State's Hall of Fame someday. Like, he didn't have Paterno's career, but there was success, even if they wanted more and he wanted more.
And all through the season, I was nervous coming into the season because the expectations had gotten so high. Yeah. And I'm one of those guys that, because I have a TV show, because I've been around coaching, I looked at last year, 2024, and said, we were as close to being an 8-4 team as we were an 11-1 team. The Wisconsin game, Allor gets hurt, Pabula does a great job, we win that game. The Minnesota game, great fake punt call by James to win that game, otherwise we lose that one. And if Tyler Warren isn't on the roster, there's no way we beat USC. I mean, that's no offense to anybody. That's how good he was. And I said, you guys don't understand how good Tyler Warren was and how he changed the dynamic of how you defend Penn State. So I was nervous coming into the season, and I said to a couple of people in the summer, I said, the Oregon game may end up being the most important game of James Franklin's life, because the expectation is so high. We had 3 non-conference games that weren't going to really tell us anything, and then an off week for everybody to build this thing up. Yeah. And it turned out to be that way. Everybody keeps saying, well, he hasn't gotten us over the hump. I said, well, what's the hump? Well, national championships. Do you guys have any idea how hard it is to get over your hump? I said, one team in the NFL wins the Super Bowl every year, and one team in college football does. Yeah. It's difficult. And with the playoff now, you've got to win 4 games in a row against really good teams. And I said, and they've changed the number. They've changed the way that happens. We're not going to get a Boise State or SMU than Boise State anymore. You look at Ohio State right now, they're going, boy, I wish we had last year, because we would open JMU and we'd get Tulane, as opposed to where they are now. But that's neither here nor there. So I think James did a lot of really good things here. He had some really good wins, had some great seasons, won some big bowl games. I think people will look at it current events versus history are very, very different. Phil Knight
Yeah,
wrote that
yeah,
in the book about my dad. He talked about we're in current events and someday history will judge better. I think history will judge him better than some fans did now. But like I said, the expectations now, and the other thing is people are much more passionate about it because they're on social media talking, yapping each other, and because of the gambling influence, so many people are more, and pun intended, invested in the outcome of the game that they get angrier when you don't win, or they can't go and talk smack on or troll people on social media. So people just got to enjoy the competition, watch the back and forth, look at these guys do what they can do, and you're going to fall short in some games. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, it's impossible to expect national championship or bust every single season. And
Absolutely.
Your father, the ordered 9 wins, but 2 national titles. It had been a long time. Even the end of Joe Paterno's career wasn't contending for a national championship every single season. It's impossible to expect that. And this is an entirely different animal than the past. And, there's been books
certainly the playoff makes
part of it. Yeah, I mean, the playoff is more defined.
Makes it totally different. It gives you a shot to win it, but it also makes it harder to win it.
There's a pros and cons.
Even if you go back to like Joe, there were 4 other seasons where they were undefeated and didn't get a crack at it.
Oh,
now,
I know.
They would have gotten the playoff and that kind of stuff. So I mean, but again, would we have won those playoffs? Would the '86 team, we had a 1-game showdown with Miami and beat them. Would we have won 3 games to get there? Probably. The 94 team. 94 team would have rolled over everybody. The 05 team.
94 team.
The 05 team. I regret the fact, one of my biggest regrets, the fact that we didn't get to see Michael Robinson and Vince Young on the same field. I mean, can you imagine?
I mean,
talking about 2 warriors. I mean,
100%. I mean, and the 94 team is fans kind of want Penn State to claim based on what programs are doing, because
I completely agree with them. And the sooner we do it, the better. But
I hear what you're saying. I mean, there's also
someday somebody's going to write a great book about all the playoff games that could have happened over the years, not just Penn State. Like, you think about some of the things we missed when a team was voted 3rd and didn't get to play for it, or the bowl tie-ins put this champ here and that champ here, and they couldn't play each other. Like, it's unfortunate, but let's enjoy it while we got it.
100%. And Jay, I do have to go, but I could talk to you all day about that, because there's been books written. I'm going to be in some meetings about this and what programs really should claim, and maybe other programs looking to claim more. Look what Auburn just did. Because you could argue the first 100 years of the sport, a lot of it was just based off opinion. There was no playoff, so it was just opinion. It was the president got involved. If you want to look that up.
Believe me, I know.
Yeah, so so
and it was Nixon, so we know it didn't count. Whatever he said, that shouldn't have mattered.
It was Nixon. So that's where you are. So at least now you have a playoff, and Ryan Day is the perfect example. Let's be honest too. He probably wouldn't be Ohio State's coach still if there wasn't a playoff. Yeah. He lost to Michigan, and he ends up being able to kind of rejuvenate that and get revenge for that, for the fans at least, by getting in the playoff and winning the national title. Without a playoff back in the day, even a 4-team playoff, they wouldn't have got in off that Michigan loss. Question. So it's a different situation now. That's where it is closer to the NFL. Again, we could talk all day, and I hope to have you back on and do more
anytime
like this for sure. So Jay Paterno, I appreciate the time.
Same to you. Thanks for having me on.
Happy holidays to you and yours. And you got your coach. So that's a good Christmas gift from Santa Claus here early in December. Jay Paterno, obviously a Penn State trustee, son of Joe Paterno, former coach as well, and the author of Blitz, the all-out pressure of college football's new era. Mic drop here on Believe, everywhere you get your podcasts, and on SiriusXM.